Thank you. Right. Can you give an indication as to who are all present on the platform from those that were invited, the Department of the Year?
Voorsitter, dis reg, ons het van die
as well. Okay, good. Right, colleagues and stakeholders and partners, welcome to this meeting of the Standing Committee on Local Government on the 28th of July. It is 11 a.m. We have gathered here today to receive a briefing from the department as well as SALGA and other stakeholders with regard to the proposed amendments on the Municipal Structures Act. It follows on to a call by this committee to solicit comments from the public and other stakeholders. We have received comments in written form and in electronic form. And this meeting was convened to consider those inputs from the public as well as those from the stakeholders, and also afford the department and other stakeholders who wish to in person make a contribution in terms of the amendments, an opportunity to do so. So that is the main purpose of this particular meeting this morning. So may I have received indication from the procedural officer, Mr. Yakutsi, who will assist us during the course of this meeting if need be, that we are a quorum. Could I just ask the members present just to indicate their presence for me?
Good morning, member.
Okay, we have Honorable Andrikus. And we also we have Honorable Makamba Boyche, as I have sort of earlier seen on the platform. Any other members present? Good. Thank you, colleagues, and welcome to our meeting. We also have just admit Alderman could say quickly. We also have officials on hand in the form of Advocate Maasdorp, who will ably assist us with his legal knowledge should the need arise. And
morning,
also morning, Advocate Maasdorp. And we also are kindly assisted on the platform by our able technical staff who will attend to all technical difficulties we may or may not experience. So colleagues, with that said, I have received an apology from Honorable Isaac Msileku, who sadly had a bereavement in the family and is therefore unable to join us today. I don't know whether there are any other apologies. Mr. Kutsi Johan, do we have any other apologies?
Voorsitter, daar is net 'n verskoning van Tobela from the department. She's also ill health and will not be able to attend the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Colleagues and guests and stakeholders, this meeting is taking place virtually on the MS Microsoft platform, Microsoft Teams platform, and we observed the rules that were adopted by this Parliament in terms of our procedures and methods of engagement on this platform, but also those of the Provincial Parliament of the Western Cape. I also ask guests who are on this platform and members of the public or media who are also with us, that and members, of course, that if you wish to members in particular and our stakeholders who make presentations, if you do engage with us, please, there is a little hand function on the platform. You could then activate the hand function to alert me that you wish to make a particular input or point of order, whatever that may be. I may also just mention that this meeting is also being broadcast live on YouTube. I would urge members and guests, please mute your microphones to avoid unnecessary background noise interference. It will also enable the quality of our audio to be much clearer. And then, colleagues, what else do I need to say? That if you do speak, you may activate your video function. And once you have concluded speaking, I would kindly urge you to deactivate it, because it will simply just enhance our ability to communicate more clearly and effectively with each other. So, where are we now? Colleagues, this meeting will unfortunately be conducted in English, because we have not developed the capability to provide simultaneous translation services on this platform. So I would urge colleagues, as far as possible, to use English as a means of communication, and where in exceptional circumstances we are unable to do so, please alert me so that we could arrange with somebody that's on the platform to provide us with the necessary translation. So we have presently with us the department, who's led by Mr. Kamal Makan, who is the Director of Municipal Governance. He will introduce his team. We also have representatives from Salga, led by Alderman Anton Coetzee. When they conduct the presentation, he will then introduce his team. And as I've earlier mentioned, we have Advocate Romeo Maasdorp, who's our legal advisor, also on the platform for assistance if required. And that's it. What we're going to do now, colleagues, we are going to follow the agenda, and the order of the agenda is that we will have a presentation by the department, and then we will engage the department's presentation very briefly. Thereafter, we will have Salga's presentation. We will engage that presentation. We have also other two presentations, but they are fairly short, and we will combine that with the Salga's presentation. And that will conclude our presentations for the day, and thereafter the committee will deliberate as to how our way forward with regard to these amendments. So without much further ado, we will proceed to the presentation by the department. Thank you. Johan, I see your hand, Johan, and I recognize you. Will you?
Chairperson, now just to bring to your attention that Honourable Member Smith and Honourable Member Maseko also joined our meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Welcome, members. Right. So let's proceed with the presentation from the department. Mr. Makan, I didn't know who's going to direct us with regard to the presentation. Johan, can you just direct me?
Chairperson, that's right. I think Kamal Makan is going to do the presentation,
Yes,
and
sir.
I have shared it on the screen, so members should be able to see it.
Okay, it's not there yet.
Just 2 seconds, Chair.
Yeah, we can see it, Chair.
Okay, let me just try it again.
Okay, there we go. We can see it's done now. So, thank you. Morning, Mr. Makan.
Morning, Chair, and morning, honourable members as well as guests. Firstly, let me just take the opportunity of thanking the Standing Committee for allowing us to present our comments as we submitted in writing as well. Chair, if I can just introduce, I've got a official from the department, Rudy Okes, who's within the directorate and one of the team members who deals with the legislation as well, who's part of the team and is on MS Teams. As Johan has indicated, Ms. Gledley has given her apologies. She's not well, so she won't be able to attend this with us. I also need to indicate, Chair, that we also got Michelle Milam from Legal Services, Department of the Premier, who's with us. Intermittently, Michelle will also come into the presentation, but I will give you a cue as to at which slide and which part of the presentation that she will come in, Chair. Chair, if I may. Yeah.
Yes, you may proceed.
Thank you. Chair, if I could switch my camera off, just so that we can the sound can be better as well, and I don't want any distortion, if that's fine.
Yes, fine with me. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just with regard to the introduction, we just want to indicate we've obviously submitted the comments. There's been various comments over the period of time on various versions of the bill that we've provided comments, which was in 2013 and 2016. And then we also did submissions, oral as well as written submissions, to the Portfolio Committee on the bill itself as well. The presentation will obviously cover just practical aspects of our comments. A fuller detail is provided in the written comments that we provided to the Standing Committee, Chair. Chair, just under the definitions, and I'm just going to guide you on so you can follow me with regard to the slides. Chair, we've just indicated with regard to clause 1A of the bill, there's a definition that the legislature has now included for declared elected. You would know in the past there were problems regarding as to when councillors were declared elected. This over time and most of the elections in the past, we've always indicated to the IEC as well as COCTA that we need to get a definition of declared elected. That's now culminated to this. Just for clarity and also for fullness in the sense of a completion of the definition, we've just indicated in our comments that the description or the definition of declared elected include a excerpt that the results of the election is declared by the IEC. So we wanted that portion just included in the definition itself, Chair. Chair, regarding clause 1E, there's the definition of a whip, which has been included in the bill. We've picked up and we've also commented in our comments that the the definition of political office bearer, as contained in the Municipal Systems Act, will obviously have to also consequentially change to include the whip. If one looks at clause 41A of the bill, whip is described as a office bearer. Hence, the COCTA would have to take into cognizance that the definition of political office bearer in terms of in the Municipal Systems Act will have to change as well, and we bring that to their attention. One also needs to take into account, if one looks at 41A, you need to follow the Schedule 3 procedures when you're dealing with the election of a whip. Hence, our comment and proposal that the definition of political office bearer be consequentially amended, Chair. Just on the next slide, Chair, clause 3. Chair, we've indicated that the deletion of the plenary system of governance is going to limit and restrict the governance structure options available to the MEC that are currently available. And therefore, from a provincial side, the deletion of the plenary system is not supported. We also need to indicate, in the questions that arise, is that once a municipality is established, or when a municipality is established, there's a consultative process that needs to be followed, and the municipality plays a part in this consultative process. Hence, the question arises, if there is no agreement between the MEC and the municipality regarding the type of executive system, we may sit with a void as to what would be the default, and the default would be obviously the plenary executive system. That's one of the reasons why we're indicating that the legislature or COCTA should retain the plenary executive system. The other is also the fact that one needs to take into account the minimal costs associated with the plenary system as well. If one look at and one compares the plenary executive system to the mayoral executive system and the collective executive system, there are cost implications with the other two. With the plenary, if you apply the provisions of the policy framework for designation of full-time councillors, you'll see that you don't have the mayoral committee, which are normally in practice appointed as full-time, or you don't have the executive committee members, which are in practice appointed full-time. So there's also a minimal cost associated to a plenary executive system. We also indicate and want to elaborate on the objects of the bill. And I'm going to ask Michelle to come in here, Chair, who will just give the legal basis and the legal technicalities regarding the further reasoning behind us not supporting the plenary executive system. If I can just ask Michelle to come in, please.
Thank you.
Good morning, Chairperson. I'm Michelle Milam from the Department of the Premier Legal Services. Thank you for this opportunity. I just want to follow on from the colleague Kamal by stating the following. During the commenting process with at that stage, the Portfolio Committee, the department raised the point that there was no, in that version of the bill at that point in time, no reason was forthcoming as to why this big change is being made in the options of governance that may be open to an MEC when establishing a municipality. And we took the point in our comments at that point that that rationality needs to be forthcoming. So in this version of the bill, paragraph 3.3 of the memorandum on the objects of the bill attempts to explain why this change is being made. And if you will bear with me, I just want to read paragraph 3.3 of the memo. It states that the reason for the deletion of the plenary executive system is 1, a plenary executive system limits the exercise of executive authority to the full municipal council. 2, the municipal council takes all executive decisions regarding the business of the municipality and is also responsible as a council for the political guidance and leadership. 3, a municipal council that has a plenary executive system cannot delegate its executive responsibilities to any individual councillor or to any of its committees. And 4, in instances where a municipal council is very large or has many decisions to contemplate, the taking of decisions in plenary would result in a slow decision-making process. Those are the reasons proffered by the memorandum on the objects of the bill for the deletion of the plenary executive system. Now, the provincial department's comments state that despite this reason being given, the memorandum in fact doesn't provide the policy basis for the deletion of the system in its entirety. If you note, the first 3 points that are listed in paragraph 3.3 of the memo simply lists the characteristics of the plenary executive system. They don't offer any motivation for why the system is being done away with. Now, bear in mind that a system is chosen exactly because of its characteristics. So the first 3 bullet points in paragraph 3.3 of the memo, in our view, do not offer any reason or rational basis for the deletion of the system. The 4th point is interesting. It states that in instances where a municipal council is very large, it's difficult to take decisions and may result in a slow decision-making process. Now, this is a general statement seemingly made without considering the power of the MEC when the MEC establishes a municipality in terms of Section 12 of the Municipal Act, and the factors that the MEC takes into consideration at that point. For example, one of the factors that the MEC takes into account is exactly the size of the council. There are other provisions in the Municipal Act where the MEC may, for example, in Section 23 sub B, may decrease the number of councillors precisely to achieve good and timely executive decisions. Granted, that is within a framework of a deviation, but it's still an option that is available to the MEC. And so the conclusion in the written comments is that the memorandum actually doesn't give a reason why this plenary executive system is being deleted. And so the department has made the proposal that it does not support the deletion of the system, and it proposes that the plenary system of governance is retained. I will hand over to Kamal again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Michelle. If I can go to the next slide, which is the comment on clause 7B, Chair. This relates to the concurrence of the National Minister. This was an insertion in the bill which regards and relates to the deviation of the number of councillors, Chair. This was not previously provided in the bill. However, now the MEC could deviate in terms of the current prevailing provision, where there is a differentiation of less than 30 councillors and beyond 30 councillors. There's further provisions now added, which relates to the deviation as well. However, besides that, what the bill now introduces is that before a number is determined, or the number of councillors is determined or even gazetted by the MEC, the MEC will require the permission of and approval of the minister, the national minister. We're stating that it will cause unnecessary and undue delays in the process if that is now still required. Furthermore, if there is a dispute regarding the number, this may lead to further delays in finalizing the determination of numbers. One also needs to take into account that this is all part of the process running up towards the local government elections. Therefore, I mean, we can't afford any delays to the process running towards the elections itself. Johan, if I can ask you to go to the next slide, please. Chair, this provision just relates to the introduction of the code of conduct, which is now being inserted in the bill. As you probably know, that Schedule 1 of the Municipal Systems Act now currently has the code of conduct. We've indicated and just brought to the attention that in 12A, one will have to, in clause 12A, which is now currently in the bill, the COCTA would have to delete any references to the Municipal Systems Act because of the fact that, I mean, the code itself is now introduced in the bill, and that we ask that it simultaneously be deleted in the Municipal Systems Act as when the bill gets introduced and is passed as an act itself, Chair. Johan, if I can ask you to go to the next slide. Chair, this is just a comment that we wanted to make and introduce and bring to the attention of the committee. It's specifically related to the provisions of Section 29(1) of the Act as it stands now. Currently, the term majority of councillors is used. There's no description, there's no definition. Hence, there's been so many interpretations relating to majority of councillors. One could obviously state, and it would be obviously obvious to say what would a majority of councillors mean. However, in order to avoid any further litigation or even legal interpretations, it would be best for the Act or the bill to rather clarify what does majority of councillors mean. I mean, there's different interpretation. If you look at bullet 2, it could mean, does it mean majority of the councillors as per the establishment notice, as the number of councillors determined, or does it mean the number of councillors as it stands in council itself? That clarity also needs to be required pertaining to majority of councillors as referred to in Section 30, subsection 2 of the Act as well. Hence, we're asking that that COCTA introduces a description or definition pertaining to majority of councillors, so that that description can be associated with the relevant provisions of Section 29(1) and Section 30, subsection 2, Chair. Thank you, Johan. Chair, this is relating to the calling of a council meeting, and this is when where the speaker or the acting speaker refuses or fails to call a meeting. We want to also indicate that, I mean, the bill should also introduce a proviso where the speaker is also unavailable. There is a distinction between refusal, failure, and also unavailability of the speaker. So we wanted an insertion of that in the bill itself. The current form of the bill is also confusing, Chair. We need a distinction, as I indicated in the previous slide, between, we also need an indication of definition of ordinary and special meeting, what is meant by an ordinary or special meeting. Also, the different triggers are distinct for each functionary. There should be sort of a uniformity regarding the triggers as well. If one looks at the speaker, the speaker's one indicates and outlines only refers to a refusal, whereas we're indicating that it should also be similar to what is indicated for the municipal manager as well, Chair. Chair, with regard to clause 29(1)(a), we wanted to just bring to the attention of the committee that we support the fact that the municipal manager may be empowered to call or chair the meeting if the speaker or the acting speaker refuses. Chair, in our comments, written comments that we submitted to the committee, we inadvertently indicated that this power may be designated. However, we just wanted to clarify, we support the current form the way it's written, to the extent that the municipal manager may be empowered to call or chair both types of meetings if the speaker refuses or fails to do so, or is unavailable to do so. And that also the MEC may designate a person to call or chair the meeting if the MM is absent, refuses, or fails to call the meeting, Chair. Chair, I'm just going to ask also Michelle just to come in here with regard to further elaborations from her side, Chair. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you again. Just to add to what the colleague Kamal has stated, I just want to elaborate on the problematic nature of clause 13 in its current form. If one looks at the wording of the clause as it stands now, we submit in the comments that the clause is confusing, and that confusion may lead to issues of interpretation. I'll just set out at least two possible credible interpretations. The one is, on a first blush reading, one can understand that when the speaker refuses to call the meeting, the municipal manager can act. If the municipal manager is absent or refuses to do so, the MEC may then designate a person to act. That action by the MEC, or that action that either the MEC or the municipal manager can take, is to in turn, on a discretionary basis based on good cause, designate a further person to call and chair the meeting. This is one possible interpretation of the clause, but another interpretation is also possible, and that is that the municipal manager himself or herself calls and chairs the meeting, and that it is only the person designated by the MEC in turn who may designate a further person on good cause to call and chair the meeting. What the intention is, as set out in paragraph 3.10 of the memorandum on the objects of the bill, compared with the substantive content of the clause, seems to be at odds with one another because paragraph 3.10 simply states that the person designated by the MEC may call and chair the meeting. Now, the clause is therefore confusing, and as I said, it leads to issues of interpretation. So the drafting and the wording needs to be tightened to clarify exactly what the intention is, and if it is the intention as contained in the memorandum on the objects of the bill, then the wording and the drafting of this clause needs to be revised. The clause is problematic for a second reason. As mentioned by my colleague Kamal, the clause refers to meetings that have been requested in terms of Section 29(1) of the Municipal Act. Now, Section 29(1) of the Municipal Act envisages two types of meetings. Those are the ordinary council meetings and the meetings requested by a majority of councillors. Now, it is submitted in our written comments that Clause 29(1)(a) should make provision not only for meetings that are requested by a majority of council of council members, but should also apply to ordinary meetings that are contemplated in Section 29(1). Right now, the wording of this clause only refers to the one type of meeting, and that is the requested meetings. The clause is also problematic because of the differentiation between the triggers for the action that the various functionaries may take and when they may take it. For example, the action in the clause that the speaker, or when the speaker's power, or rather when the speaker refuses to call the meeting, then action can be taken. When the MEC can act when the municipal manager is absent or refuses. Now, there is a qualitative difference between a refusal to call a meeting and absence from a meeting, or unavailability to call a meeting. And the question or the concern that is raised is, why are the functionaries being treated differently? Why is action not triggered on the same basis between, for example, the municipal manager and the MEC? Why that differentiation? And it is submitted that the action should be triggered by all functionaries under the same circumstances. So it's absence, refusal, and also unavailability. and the clause should be reconsidered in that regard. It should also be noted that our understanding of the clause is that the clause now introduces a further level of designation. So if one goes on the second interpretation, where the person designated by the MEC may in turn then designate another person, if that is the intention of the clause, then the question arises why. The purpose of the clause, to my mind, is to ensure a quick response when the speaker or the acting speaker does not act. This further level of designation, if that is the intention, may have the opposite effect of that. Also, the clause in its current wording, the municipal manager or the person designated by the MEC may, on good cause shown, designate the person to call and chair the meeting. Now, the clause now introduces a further requirement of good cause. The power to take the action is discretionary and will be triggered by the good cause. Good cause is a fluid concept. And it calls for an assessment of the factual situation, of the factual context. So concern is raised in our comments as to what the good cause must convince the municipal manager or the person designated by the MEC of. To what objective must the good cause be aimed? It is that answer that will be determinative of whether the municipal manager or the person designated by the MEC will exercise their power. And it is not clear from the clause in its current form what that objective is. And the written comments submit that if the clause is retained, it must clearly provide what the objective of the good cause must be. That is not forthcoming in the current wording of the clause. I will hand back to Kamal at this point.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Michelle. Jan, can I just ask you to maybe move the next slide? Thank you. Chair, just also on with regard to clause 14, we've also submitted our comments that there should be a clear distinction and definition between what is meant by ordinary, special, and urgent meetings. So clause 29A, as it stands now in the bill, makes a distinction between these three meetings. However, there is no clarity, neither any definition pertaining to this. One obviously needs to, in practice, municipalities are now using these terms loosely, and I think the purpose of the act or the purpose of legislation would obviously to provide clarity, and it will be necessary for the bill to draw a clear distinction and define what is meant by ordinary, special, and urgent meeting as contained in 29A. Chair, we've also indicated, and I think we've already mentioned, that we need to create. There needs to be a distinction, and there needs to be clarity regarding ordinary meetings as well as special meetings, as contemplated in section 18.2, as well as 29.1, as it currently stands. Chair, if one looks at clause 14 at the moment, the municipal manager does not call meetings, for example, of disciplinary committees. And if one reads clause 14 now, it obviously indicates that the municipal manager of the municipality must give notice to the public on the date and venue of every, and it talks about the ordinary special council meeting, but it also indicates or a meeting of a committee of council. And I think there's been an oversight in the sense that the municipal manager doesn't, in practice, call meetings of committees. And that's normally, we're giving examples such as a disciplinary committee meeting itself as well. If I can move to the next slide. Thanks, Jan. Chair, just with regard to clause 23, the Section 79A has been introduced into the bill, which is relating to the establishment of the Municipal Public Accounts Committee. Chair, what we've indicated and highlighted and we've picked up is that what's outstanding in the bill is the timeframes regarding the various reports and the reviews by which the MPAC should be giving these reports. For example, the oversight report or the review on the AG report, or even the recommendations to council where items have been referred to the MPAC. I think it's important that the MPAC is held accountable to the extent of a time frame by which it needs to give feedback or recommendations to the council itself. Otherwise, it just becomes open-ended, Chair. Chair, we've also indicated that the introduction of the new the audit committee in Section 79(5) becomes superfluous because, I mean, Section 166 of the MFMA does provide a clear elaboration of the audit committee. So we've just indicated in our comments that the audit committee or the introduction or the insertion of clause 79A5 is obviously superfluous because the MFMA does provide for a description or definition of audit committee. Thank you, Jan. If I can go to the next slide. Chair, as we've indicated and I've alluded earlier, the bill introduces and brings in the Code of Conduct now under the Municipal Structures Bill. And with regard to item 5.2, we just wanted the wording change, which is becoming problematic because the way it reads now at the moment, if a councillor misses 3 or more meetings, it reads and it indicates that he must be removed. And this obviously then misses the aspect of following the uniform standard procedures and the rules of natural justice before a councillor can be removed. So hence we're indicating that the wording there should be changed to may be removed, which is after the uniform standard procedure has been implemented and followed as well. Chair, with regard to item 16, we've indicated that there should be, in practice, there's always an initiator, which is who plays a critical role in the disciplinary of councillors, and we think it's an ideal opportunity now for a provision to be inserted in the bill that provides for the appointment of an initiator in the disciplinary process or hearing of councillors. Thank you, Jan. If I can go to the next slide. Chair, just with regard to item 16, we've indicated that item 16 currently reads, and we've asked that the current form of item 16.1 be replaced with the proposed one that we've just outlined in inverted commas. I think firstly, one needs to describe, and the bill should describe, what is a special committee. At the moment, there isn't any description or even any definition of what is the composition of a special committee. We've also indicated that when the municipal councillors obviously consider the report as in terms of item 15.1c, it must decide that when it decides that disciplinary steps must be taken against the councillor, it must establish a special committee, and we've proposed a special committee consisting of councillors as well as an appropriate a person with an appropriate legal knowledge as well, which is to investigate and make a finding on any alleged breach of the code, and to make recommendations to council regarding the appropriate sanction or sanctions. We've also indicated there again that the council should also appoint an initiator, or alternatively authorize the municipal manager to appoint an initiator as we all know, the initiator plays a critical role with regard to the submission of evidence against a councillor where there's been an alleged breach of code of conduct. Chair, thank you. That's the presentation on our side, Chair. And unless Michelle's got anything further to add, but that's that from our side. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McCann. Michelle, you have anything else you want to add?
Chair, I don't have anything further to add. Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Colleagues, what we're going to do now, we're going to listen to all the presentations because they all speak to the same thing, and then we will then have the engagement after. So I will ask the leader of the SALGA delegation, Alderman Johan Coetzee, if you could ready yourself and your presentation, and then we could have your presentation, and all the presentations and comments were circulated to members. So may I ask Salga's presentation we received this morning, that there are quite a number of clauses that you support. Could you then possibly just speak to those that you do not support, that you have a different interpretation that you'd like to share with us, instead of, you know, speak to those that you currently support? Thank you.
Good, Chairperson. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir. Alderman Coetzee, I can see you too. So you can introduce your delegation, and then whenever you're ready, and we can then start.
Thank you, Chairperson. I see from the list that the persons from SALGA present is, first of all, our Provincial Executive Officer, Mr. Khalil Mulaji, then Armstrong Pela, who is our champion of intergovernmental relations, and then also Loiso Jamela. I'm not sure whether I've missed anyone out, but these are the names that I see. Chairperson, absolutely, I will not deal with the matters that we indeed agree upon, and I will only touch on those that we want.
Great, thank you, Alderman. Before we proceed, I see is a hand raised by Honourable van der Westhuizen. Honourable van der Westhuizen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Can I ask that this presentation be put in presentation mode? I see there are some slides, like slide 4, which seems to have a lot of text, and I would like it to be appear as big as possible on my screen, just to assist my eyesight. So if it could be changed to presentation mode, please.
Okay, Johan, can you be of assistance there? There we go. Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Coetzee, if you're ready, then we may proceed. Okay, right. Alderman Coetzee was kicked out of the platform. Alderman Coetzee.
Chairperson, can you hear me?
We can hear you loud and clear now. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure what happened there.
Sure, thanks a lot.
Glad you back. Okay, thank you, Chairperson. The contribution that we're making this morning follows the resolutions taken at a 2016 National SALGA conference, and we have engaged the National Department of Kohta on our proposals, and most of the proposals that we have made, we've also addressed the Standing Committee on Quota, and most of the proposals that we've made have indeed been included in this presentation or in the bill. So I'm going to start off with section 1 or clause 1, but I see the presentation calls it section 1, so let's stick to the wording. We obviously support the change in the definitions there, with the qualification that we want the definition of the single whip must also follow the similar practice as a national and provincial level, and therefore you should have your political party whips and a single council whip then, or a chief whip, whatever you want to call him. And with regards then to sections 3, 4, and 5, which we also support, we want to qualify it. And this is now about the plenary municipalities. And I've listened to what my colleague Kamal McCann said. And there's one thing that I think we cannot deny, and that was from their presentation. They make the point, which I think is a very valid point, and that is that if the plenary municipalities fall away, there's no default position when the MEC and the municipalities do not agree. I don't think that is something we can ignore. But as far as the SALGA position is concerned, we support the deletion of these sections, but we want to qualify it to say that the timing of when these amendments come into play is actually quite important, because it's difficult to envisage how this will be implemented midstream. It makes imminent sense that if these amendments are implemented, that it should in fact be implemented in the beginning of a municipal term. The reason why we support it is because the plenary municipalities that we currently have, we find are your smaller municipalities. And we don't really envisage plenary type municipalities in our larger municipalities. And therefore we say that these smaller type municipalities would be more suited if they are collective executive systems combined with a ward participatory system. We also say that there's a clear link between the proposed amendments and the policy framework for recognition of full-time and part-time councillors, and we refer there to section 18, subsection 4 of the Act, and therefore the policy framework should likewise be subjected to review. Chairperson, with regards to section 7, subsection A, and section 7, subsection B, the determination of the number of councillors, we also support the amendments there as stipulated in the bill for the same considerations that I have just mentioned. It might be necessary for this to come into effect only at the beginning of a term. And then we also need to consider the financial implications to municipalities. And once again, we need to revisit the policy framework. With regards to section 8 and the cooling off period, I just want to bring to your attention that the reference there in paragraph A of 16.6b should, I believe, be 16.7b. I think that's just a typing error. But apart from that, we support the amendment as it stands in the bill. I then want to jump to all the other sections we have no problem with, and I want to jump to section 23 or clause 23, as my colleague Kamal referred to, the Municipal Public Accounts Committee.
Right.
We support the proposed amendment, but what we say is that the nature, the stature, and the authority of the impacts should be similar to the standing committees on public accounts at the national and provincial legislature level. And this is a very general statement, but what we mean by that is that in some municipalities we find that the Municipal Public Accounts Committee, as they currently exist, do not really have a lot of administrative support. And we somehow wish to bring home that it is vital to the operation of this committee that they have a strong and sufficient administrative support. The other thing that we've also discussed was the matter of subpoenaing witnesses. If I can give you a scenario, most of the municipal public accounts committees in municipalities also do the MFMA Section 32 investigations into unlawful, irregular, and wasteful expenditure, fruitless and wasteful expenditure, and that kind of investigation is a quasi-judicial investigation where you have to invite people sometimes to make presentations to the committee, especially when you find that somebody, in fact, is responsible in terms of Section 32, subsection 2B of the MFMA to pay money back to the municipality. And in that instance, you may wish to hear that person's side of the story, but there's no method to compel that person to appear before impact. I mentioned this. I believe SCOPA in Parliament does have the power to subpoena, but municipalities currently do not have. That is something that I'm just leaving with you to consider or to think about. Chairperson, I then want to go further than the comments of Salga and talk quickly to the bill itself. And I'm going to jump to page 16 of the bill, particularly to the breaches of code. Now, this is the code of conduct for councillors, it is now proposed be moved and slightly amended to be inserted in the Structures Act, so to be most probably then removed from the Systems Act. And in the bill, it's under item 15, where it speaks to breaches of code. This is the old item 13 of Schedule 1 to the Systems Act. And I want you to consider something, and this is not in writing before you, and this is not a Salga position. This is a personal position. As you know, Chairperson, I have a certain amount of practical experience in disciplinary hearings against councillors. But if we look at item 13, or then item 15 in the bill, rather, it's always been problematic. And maybe this is a very good time to revisit now item 15 in the bill, previously item 13 in Schedule 1 to the Systems Act, in totality, because it's problematic. And I have had discussions with my colleague Makan previously about this, and also in various platforms. But let me picture the scenario to you, and this is a practical scenario. First of all, it says in 15A, the Speaker can authorize an investigation of the facts and circumstances of the alleged breach. Now, this word authorize, do not make it clear whether the Speaker have to appoint someone to do the investigation, or whether the speaker can in fact do it himself or herself. Where this becomes problematic is with a fairly simple matter such as absence from a meeting, where it's a factual question. Does that mean you have to appoint an investigator like a legal firm at the cost of 10 or 15,000 rand to tell you the councillor was in fact not present in the meeting, whereas the speaker can do this very easily and without any costs himself or herself? My second problem there is paragraph C, and that would then be paragraph 15, subparagraph 1C, where it says that the matter must be reported to a meeting of the Municipal Council after paragraphs A and B have been complied with. The purpose of this, and then afterwards it says it must be reported to the MEC. The problem with this is that if the preliminary investigation is reported to council, and council then decides that the councillor is most probably guilty, and it has to be referred to a special committee of council, the question arises whether council have now already applied their mind to the merits of the matter, and whether when the matter is referred back by the special committee to council for a final decision, whether council have not contaminated themselves, whether they can in fact sit in judgment now in order to take a final decision. The same argument applies to the MEC. If the matter is referred to the MEC, removal of a councillor or consideration of removal, I like McCall's suggestion that the word must be changed to may, because a discretion must be exercised. But the question arises whether the minister is now contaminated or not. Then subparagraph 5 or subsection 5, whatever you want to call it, 15 subsection 5 is new. That is not contained in item 13 of Schedule 1 to the Systems Act. And I want you to take a look at this very carefully. And I'm saying this to you from a practical point of view as a litigator. It says, if the Speaker of Council is the alleged perpetrator, or the Speaker refuses to authorize an investigation, the Council must establish a special committee. Now, Chairperson, what this basically says is that Council is only entitled to refer this matter to a special committee in two instances. The one is if the Speaker is implicated, or the other one is if the Speaker refuses to authorize an investigation. There are no, in this item 5, there are no other instances in which Council may then lawfully refer the matter to a committee. I think that's problematic. But Chairperson, I think I'll leave it there. I don't have anything further. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alderman Kutsi. Right, that's the second presentation. And then we have, there's no other formal presentation, but on the platform we have a councillor who made a submission, Councillor Sichaba. If you can hear me, if you wish to speak to your submission, you're welcome to do so. If not, then we can just leave it at that. We received your voice note and your submission, but I'll give you an opportunity if you wish to speak to your submission. Councillor Sichaba?
Yes, Chair, Honourable
Okay,
Chair.
you can hear me. Okay, thank you.
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you very much. First, I would like to give greetings to the committee and to the guests. thank you for allowing and considering the voice note. I think it's very progressive, Chair, that especially in these times that people have different kinds of ways of expression. I apologize because I was sick that whole week. So I thought it, but for the sake of progress, that I give the submission. Chair, mine is going to be in the space of the Public Accounts Committee, because that is where I am actually I am exposed to, and we work with it every day. One is that we agree with Salga, the previous speaker, when he says that we wish that MPECs should be given the same legislative powers as provincial scopers and national scoper. And the reason being is that in terms of correctly so, that we cannot subpoena, in terms of investigations, we cannot do any investigations. One is that, and also AG emphasizes many times that why Public Accounts Committee is unable to investigate matters of wasteful and fruitful expenditure. But because we are at the mercy of the council, when council doesn't have the funds, when council haven't have the capacity, then you are unable to do that work. So it becomes very important. The second part is the fact that who appears in front of the committee. At times you'll see that there is officials are the ones who end up being the ones who are coming to the committee to explain instead of the executives. So by that it means that the terms of reference, because that's what council has, we have something called terms of reference of MPECs, that they are not standardized. So when you take through within the provincial scope legislative framework, or we have the same legislative powers, it will enable us to have a standardized way of doing things. Because currently we work on terms of reference, and each municipality will have to say, they will say, this is your scope of work, and most scope of work is only an annual report, which means within the in-year, you don't necessarily have to sit as MPECs, but the most compulsory one is the annual report. So we are saying when we have the powers, the legislative powers as the provincial scope and national scoper, it can make things better for MPECs. The second one, Chair, is the public participation. Nowhere in MPECs we are talking about the public participation, but it becomes a critical role, the public participation, because at times it is just done just to tick a box. If we have done the advertising and then we said, no, but we have made the public participation, if we have put it in the website, but we can eliminate a lot of things, because Public Accounts Committee is there for the people. It is there to ensure that the executive and the municipality is accounting to the people. Therefore, then if it's compulsory, then we'll have to ensure that we are making public participation a very compulsory way of working. Yes, the Speaker's office has the public participation, but within the public accounts, we are talking about the finance of the municipality and all the performances and all other forms of accounting to the public. And at times, because the communities, they do not understand they do not understand the language that is within the annual report. And then it needs for us then to go and go and explain to the people. But as I'm saying, as we are experiencing, we only use the public participation only and as when, because this can eliminate a lot of things in terms of projects, especially projects that are done in the basics of the municipality. So we are saying let there be a clause that is stating that public participation is compulsory. The third one, Chair, is the one of the definitions or what we call it, the assurance bodies. You find that there is MPAC as an assurance body, and then you find the audit committee as an assurance body, and then you find the internal audit unit. We are saying that why things are happening, why so much discrepancies or irregularities are happening year by year when the assurance bodies are there. Then when one looks at it, it looks at, because the internal audit unit is internal, it functionally, it is supposed to report to the audit committee and administratively to the municipal manager. However, because they are being permanently put in municipality as part of a staff, now they lose objectivity. The proposal is to say that if perhaps it's a practical thing, if perhaps the audit committee, the process of selection of audit committees are done externally, whether it could be from the treasurer's office or from the COCTA, but they are done from outside, but treasurer should be fine. They are done from there, and then they are placed within the municipalities. Then there is it looks as if at least the process has been done from outside. These are different people that they do not know the environment, and also for the internal audit unit, if it can be placed within the treasurer's office, or even from COCTA, or even from the provincial, so that they go and do the work, then they become very objective, and at the same time, they are able to stay maybe 3 years in the space. Because what happens now, the audit committee, it's an audit committee of council. It appoints and it gets the reports. But if the reports, the council is not, they just table the report, but then nothing else is actually being done. Even if those reports, they go to MPAC, but MPAC, if we as MPAC, we make suggestion, again, it goes to council, and council can either reject or approve those for whatever actions that need to be taken. But however, if those reports are being able to be taken outside, in a body that is outside, so that there is some form of monitoring and to evaluate how far are you and so forth, it enables things to be much better, because what you call it, these assurance bodies, they are very important in terms of making sure accountability is there. Chair, basically those are the things that I think, and lastly is the section, making MPAC section 79 is also not being helpful. It would be very great if it was section 80, because the reason why MPAC can only meet 4 times in a year, based on the investigation, based on the work that needs to happen, and based on the reports that they need to go through, it really becomes very impossible to be able to be a committee that meets an ad hoc committee. Because one of the reasons why that, and AG is very emphasizing on this, that the in-year reporting needs to be compulsory. The in-year reporting, meaning that those reports that needs to be dealt with within the year, they must be dealt with as with the specific time frames, because when they are not being dealt with, by the time you get to the annual report, you having some gaps and reports irregularities that have already occurred long time ago, and it becomes a repetition. And therefore, if in-year reporting and dealing with all the different reports within the year, they must be made compulsory. Because as I said, other councils, they only make compulsory the annual report. Therefore, Chair, and lastly, is to make the committee a Section 80 committee. I therefore submit my submission, Chair, and I thank you for the opportunity that I can do that. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ichaba. I may indicate that Councillor Ichaba is the chairperson of Impact in the Gardenwood District Municipality. Thank you for your submission. It's highly appreciated, and I think it is something that we can work with.
Thank you,
colleagues,
Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, we have now, the reason why I, allowed Councillor Ichaba to speak directly after Honourable Alderman Kutsia is that it's related to the functions of or impact as it is contained in the bill. I neglected to ask whether there are any other comments Alderman Kutsi and his delegation would like to speak to, because he did mention other people of Salga who's also on the platform. If there are any comments that they would like to make, they are provided with an opportunity to do so now. Alderman Kutsi and your Salga colleagues, anything else you'd like to add?
No, nothing from my side, Chairperson.
Okay, good. Okay, right, Johan, there are no other submissions from any organized formations that'd like to present here this afternoon?
No, Chairperson, other than the written comments that members have received.
Okay. May I then ask if there are any members of the public on the platform would like to, speak to the amendments? Going once, going twice. Then lastly, Advocate Maasdorp, is there anything that you'd like to mention? I know we're going to call upon you, your expertise much later on, but preliminary at this stage, if there's anything that you would like to say, you may do so.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, I have a few matters which I would like to raise with the committee. I'm not sure if my colleague Johan can maybe assist with just uploading the actual bill so that members can follow my thinking or my input.
Thank you, Johan. Is it possible for you to do that?
Chairperson, just give me a few minutes. I'll see if I can get him up.
For sure. Okay. Just be with us, Advocate Maasdorp.
Goed so. And in particular, clause 9 of the bill, if you can do that, then we can just zoom into clause 9.
Yeah, in particular clause 9, I Honorable Maseku's hand was up.
No, sorry, Chair. It was a mistake. My apologies,
No
Chair.
problem. No problem, colleague.
Chairperson, can you see it?
No, we can't see it yet. I can't see it yet. Any other members, can you see it?
Not yet,
No,
Chair.
it's not there yet, Chair.
Okay, good. John, do you have it?
Okay. Chairperson, looks, I'm struggling to get my PDF files visible on the screen. Let's try something, and maybe my colleague can start speaking to the committee so long. I'll see what I can do.
Okay, Advocate Master, while John is struggling to get the presentation up or the document, if you feel comfortable speaking to it so long, you may do so.
No, certainly, Chair, it's not a problem. I was just hoping that it would assist members to follow. But
Sure.
clause 9 in particular, if I could get there myself now. Clause 9 speaks to a reference to Section 22 of the Municipal Act. I'm not sure if members have the Municipal Act before them or in front of them, but if one looks, Chair, at at clause 9, it says Section 22 of the Municipal Act is hereby amended by the deletion of subsection 4. And then it continues. It says Section 22 of the Municipal Act is hereby amended by the addition of the following subsection. And then it says subsection 5, an elected councillor is deemed to assume office on the date of declaration of the results of an election. Now, if one looks at Section 22 of the Municipal Act, then it does not follow that one can or should add a subsection 5. And what I'm getting to, Chair, is that it seems to me that in the bill, that the reference to Section 22 in the Municipal Act, and then I want to focus the committee's attention to clause 10C of the bill, which is the exact same wording of clause 9 in the bill. And it appears to me, if one reads the Municipal Act and one reads clause 9 and clause 10C, it appears to me that that is a grave error in the print or in the draft of the bill, because it seems that clause 9B in the bill adds a subsection which cannot be added to the Municipal Act. I'm not sure if members follow my thinking, but clause 9B is out of context. It is erroneously inserted in the bill because it is properly inserted in clause 10C of the bill.
Okay.
Okay. Check, are we going to deliberate once we've had all the presentations? Because
Yeah,
I have different
Advocate
interpretation on these clauses.
yes, the Advocate Master is the last input that we're having before we open the floor for engagement. So, Advocate Master, thank you. Are you done, or you like
No,
to add?
there's just a few more views I want to share, Chair.
Yeah, for sure. Please go
And
ahead.
I will direct the committee to the code of conduct.
In the Assistance
And
Act.
some of my colleagues have already spoken to some of the issues, so I'll just try and skip those. But in addition to what has been said before, I want to direct the committee's attention also to item 15.1a of the code, which speaks to the role of the speaker in respect of a breach of the code. It says, and I'll just read for the sake of completeness, if the speaker of a municipal council on unreasonable suspicion is of the opinion that the provision of this code has been breached, the speaker must, and those are very operative words, the speaker must authorize an investigation of the facts and circumstances. Then it says, give the councillor, the speaker must give the councillor a reasonable opportunity to reply in writing. And I think it's been mentioned before, I'm not too sure who the investigating entity is or should be in the event of the speaker having a reasonable suspicion. It is not clear on the text that it is in fact the speaker who's the investigating entity, or whether the speaker may cause an investigation to be had on the facts and circumstances. That could be very crucial, and we all know, with respect, we all know how the dynamics at local government and in councils are highly polarized and politicized. And it is going to be very crucial when a speaker, on his or her suspicion, in other words, a subjective consideration, will cause an investigation to be had, or will in fact be the investigating entity. That could speak to issues of partiality, credibility, and the credibility of an outcome that may ensue from an investigation. So as to who or what the investigating entity is, needs to be clarified as well. But then having said that, if one looks at clause 15.5, or rather item 5, it says, if the speaker is the alleged perpetrator, or the speaker refuses to authorize an investigation, the council must establish a committee. Now, nowhere after that is there an instance provided for that deals with a speaker's refusal. It baffles me that in a system of governance, where a speaker is an executive authority, as politicized as dynamics are at local level, it baffles me that there's this omission that a speaker can refuse to authorize an investigation, but no steps are taken against the speaker for that subversion of a process. That would be a profound dereliction if a speaker's office or an executive authority can be countenanced to refuse. It doesn't even say refuse on reasonable grounds or refuse with good cause. It just says that if a speaker is the perpetrator or the speaker refuses, it baffles me that a speaker can get away with refusing and in the process subvert what may be a very necessary investigation. And we know the issues of governance, of corruption at local level, and how a speaker can refuse an investigation without facing consequences him or herself is for me a profound void in this bill. That's the further point I would like to raise. Also, 15(1)(c), it says that if the Speaker of a municipal council is of the opinion that a provision of the code has been breached, the Speaker must, of course, like I said earlier, authorize an investigation, give the councillor an opportunity to reply. But then it says the Speaker must report the matter to a meeting of the council. Now, that is a very deliberate choice of words, because just lower down in 15(3), it says the Speaker must report the outcome of the investigation to the MEC. Now, reporting the matter is one instance, but reporting an outcome is a completely different stage of a process. And like I said earlier, it is not clear who the investigating entity is. Is it a special committee? Is it the council? Is it a person appointed by or designated by the Speaker? That is not clear, but what is clear is that the Speaker must report the matter to a meeting of council, and later the Speaker must report the outcome. But then again, we have an instance where if the Speaker is the perpetrator, then council must establish a special committee. If the Speaker is the alleged perpetrator, the council must establish a special committee. But then we read in 16(3), it says, the Speaker must inform the MEC in the province concerning the finding and sanction decided on by council. Now, what if the Speaker is the perpetrator? Who is then, by default, the entity to inform the MEC of a finding or of a sanction? And speaking about the MEC, we notice that if one follows the chronology of item 16, that a councillor who has been sanctioned has 14 days within which to appeal to the MEC. But then we see in item 16(7), interestingly, it says, take note, a councillor may appeal to an MEC. That establishes the MEC as an appeal authority with everything that goes with it, rules of natural justice, etc. But in item 16(7), it provides that if the MEC is of the opinion, those are very profound words in law. If an executive authority is of the opinion, and again, I repeat, we are very well aware of the dynamically politicized context at local level. But here again, it says, if the MEC is of the opinion that the councillor has breached a code and that such contravention warrants a suspension or removal, the MEC may suspend. Take note, the MEC may impose a punitive measure. The MEC may remove the councillor from office. Who's the appeal authority now in the instance where the MEC is of the opinion that the councillor has breached? Let's say that councillor is now suspended or is removed, but the councillor wants to appeal, as is provided in 16(3). To whom must he or she submit an appeal? Because again, the MEC would then be already attracted into the situation. Chair, the other issues that I wanted to raise are already covered by my colleagues Mellom and McCann. So for now, I'll just leave it at that, Chair.
Thank you so much, Advocate Maasdorp. Valuable contribution for us to consider and reflect upon. I'm sure my colleagues will feel the same. That brings us to the end of all formal sort of submissions and presentations, colleagues. I will open the floor now for questions of clarity. May I just remind us all that we're not here now to convince each other as to which interpretation of the clauses are correct. It's just where we have issues that we want to clear up, we may ask and direct our questions to the particular presenter. Colleagues, you may indicate your desire to speak. I have Alderman Kutsi, whose hand is up. I recognize you, and I have Honourable van der Westhuizen, and we take it from there. Alderman Kutsi.
Thank you, Chairperson. I just want to say something quickly about the impact chair of Garden Routes contribution. I believe it's Councillor Leshaba.
That's correct.
She requested that impact be a Section 80 committee as opposed to a Section 79 committee. That's in terms of the Structures Act. I just quickly want to say there are two main reasons why this can never be. The first one is because Section 80 was created to assist the mayor in the execution of executive functions. And your oversight committee is mainly tasked at exercising oversight over the executive. So you cannot report to the people whom you are supposed to investigate. That's why it's a Section 79 committee, which reports directly to council. That's the one thing. The other thing is, which is very important, is the distinctive difference between Section 79 and Section 80. Section 79 has a mechanism that provides for the co-option of external knowledgeable people, which Section 80 does not have. This provision in Section 79 is very, very useful, especially in impact, where you sometimes need lawyers or chartered accountants or people like that to assist you. And therefore, on that basis, I can never see that impact become a Section 80 committee. It should always be a Section 79 committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Kutsi. Honourable van der Westhuizen, I recognize you.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Chair, just a few comments, and I would also appreciate it if you could again allow some of our people presenting to us to just now also respond to this. To Advocate Maasdorp, can I just ask, Section 22 deals with metropolitan and local municipalities, and Section 23 deals with district municipalities. Yet you have found that insertion of those words, an elected councillor is deemed to assume office on the date of the declaration of the results of an election in 22 and then again in 23 as a duplication, or you had a problem with that. Now my question is just taking that these actually speak to the different types of municipalities, do you still believe that that sentence should only appear in the one section? Then I think we can probably agree on the fact we say that declaration should be by the IEC. I think that is pretty moot. There is obviously an extra aspect, and that is where municipalities delegate representatives to a district municipality. And I'm not sure, and that's where I'm grateful for the SALGA people that are in our presence, to just say whether they are then also declared by the IEC, or whether it's just a fact that the municipality nominate them and then they get I almost want to say sent to the district municipality. Then I have a bit of a problem. I've had always a bit of a problem with the definition, and I'm referring to the Code of Conduct, or not the definition, with a clause which says that a councillor must be present at 3 consecutive meetings, or that a councillor could be removed if that councillor was absent from 3 consecutive meetings of a committee. A few problems that I have with that, and I'm actually surprised that there hasn't been more made of this. The first one is what does it mean nowadays to be present at a meeting? I can just assume that we will work more and more with online meetings. So that's the first one. The second one is also sometimes councillors are prevented from attending a meeting, let's say, due to illness or an accident, etc. And it has been my impression that this clause can be abused by councils by calling 3 meetings on 3 consecutive days. And because they all know that 2 councillors have been in an accident and they have been out of action and not able to attend, and now afterwards they can quite rightly say, oh, you haven't attended 3 consecutive meetings of that council or whatever. So I would also like that to be tightened up by, for example, saying 3 scheduled meetings or 3 ordinary scheduled meetings, because I as Advocate Master so rightly said, unfortunately, we see all kinds of tricks being played at local government level, particularly, but also in other levels of government, to try and try and out political opponents, where actually we're not opponents. We're all people that should work to the benefit of municipalities. Then, Chair, if I may also just ask, and I get the points made under the Code of Conduct, and I really would like us to tighten this up. The Code of Conduct, and particularly the steps to be taken by speakers, I've always felt needed a lot of rewording, and I'm really sorry that the amendment bill doesn't address those. And some of those issues have been raised quite rightly by Selga, by Alderman Kutsia, and by Advocate Marsdorf. But for example, speakers often are inundated with frivolous complaints of councillors' conduct. And I personally believe that there should be, I almost want to say, a predetermination of the facts. If people come and complain about a councillor, surely they must be able to, bring some evidence, or they must bring an affidavit to you with that. Now, and then the councillor, should already be given, to my mind, an opportunity to respond. Quite often, that first response will allay all fears that that councillor has transgressed. And then also, Chair, the Code of Conduct is extremely wide when it says that a councillor must always act in the best interests of the municipality. I mean, this is very subjective. Sometimes, stopping a tender might be an act that you believe is in the best interest of the municipality, and another person would believe by awarding, that tender under emergency procurement operations may also be in the best interest. And obviously, I know a councillor should not be involved with tenders and so on, but speaking out or speaking in favor of this, I think it's just too subjective. And then, Chair, if I may just call this thing of the MECs calling a meeting, I believe there should be some restrictions. put on MECs to act in this regard, because we have unfortunately also seen cases where, where the local government may be in the hands of one political party and the province may be in another, that a lot of pressure is put on MECs to act in certain regards, and I think that we may have to consider putting in something that will restrict cases where, if a speaker believes that he or she has got a good reason not to, call a meeting, say, for example, he or she has got information that some of the signatures are forged or couldn't be, actual signatures, that for an MEC now to overrule kind of a speaker in that regard, I think is a serious concern to me. And then can I just the last one on this, and then I'll give some of my colleagues an opportunity as well. The majority of councillors, I'm not sure if we now have tightened up that issue sufficiently. The majority of councillors being in office at that time, if I could just get some feedback whether those people that work with this legislation on a daily basis, whether they believe that we have clarity on that now. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Honourable van der Westhuizen. Does anybody else like to comment or questions for clarity? Okay, right. Okay, once, twice, thrice. So, thank you, colleagues. Advocate Master is going to respond to the comments made by Honourable van der Westhuizen, and if anybody else would like to respond thereafter, I will give an opportunity, and then we will proceed to the final stage of our meeting. Thank you, Honourable Advocate Master. I recognise you.
Thank you, Chair. I note the observation by Member van der Westhuizen regarding the two different council elections. Section 22 of the Municipal Act speaks to the election of metropolitan and local councils. Section 23 speaks to the election and appointment of district councils. Section 22 of the Municipal Act has 4 subsections. Section 23 of the Act has 4 subsections. Clause 9 of the Amendment Bill says Section 22, the one with the 4 subsections, is hereby amended by the deletion of subsection 4. That then leaves us with 3 subsections of Section 22. Then clause 9 of the bill says, and by the addition of the following subsection, then it says 5, an elected councillor is deemed to assume office on the date of the declaration. What we will then have, if we follow the text of the bill, is a section 22 of the Municipal Act with 4 clauses then, numbered 1, 2, 3, 5, because subsection 4 has been deleted. However, if one goes to, and I can understand why subsection 4 is being deleted because of the context of the new bill. However, if one goes to clause 10C, it says the Municipal Act is hereby amended by the addition of the following subsection. 5, an elected councillor is deemed to assume office on the date of the declaration. That implies then that clause 23, with its current 4 subsections gets an additional subsection numbered 5. And that's the distinction I'm drawing.
Thank you, Advocate Mansdorp.
Thank you, Chair.
Right, as we're saying that we're not going to convince each other of anything. We just try to clear up where there's ambiguity and where we don't really understand a particular clause very clearly. Honourable van der Westhuizen, I recognize you.
Yes, thank you. So it's a numbering issue. Is that, do I understand Advocate Mansdorp correctly? It's just the way legislation is written when amendments are introduced.
Advocate Mansdorp?
It's not just a numbering issue because 22 adds a 5th clause to the Act.
Okay.
Whereas there can only be 3 in that Act because 4 has been deleted.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Advocate Mansdorp. I recognize Alderman Kutsia. Anton?
Thanks, Chairperson. I also want to deal with a couple of things raised by Member van der Westhuizen. The first one, if I understand him correctly, is his question whether councillors, when elected, are declared elected by the EC in the districts as opposed to the local municipalities. In the districts, we have 2 components. We have councillors who are directly elected, and we have councillors who are sent there by their local municipalities. The way that I understand it is that the councillors are appointed by the IEC to the municipalities where they are initially elected. So in other words, the councillors directly elected to the district municipalities are appointed by the IEC there, and the councillors directly elected to the B municipalities are appointed by the IEC to the B municipalities, and only afterwards in a council meeting in the B councillors then they have already been appointed. With regards to the attendance of meetings and item 3 of Schedule 1 to the Systems Act, specifically the abuse thereof, I fully agree with you. The code of conduct for councillors are quite often abused. And we in Salga, we find that where municipalities asked us to assist them in preliminary investigations, I would come to a municipality and find that there are 6 different cases that the speaker he or she has to deal with, and in fact only 1 or 2 of them are in fact transgressions of the code of conduct. But with regards to the attendance of meetings and having 3 quick consecutive meetings, remember that there's a bigger consideration here. First of all, meetings have to be advertised. They normally take place in a cycle, and also agendas have to be drawn up, etc., before you can have a meeting. So to have 3 meetings in 3 consecutive days is difficult to envisage. Although I presume it's not impossible, but I think it's difficult to envisage. I think the most important thing here, Andrikas, if I can say, or sorry, Member van der Westhuizen, the most important thing here is the objectivity of the speaker. But because the speaker is also a political animal, who belongs to a political party and who belongs to a caucus, the speaker sometimes get pressurized or influenced to take certain actions which in the ordinary course of an objective person would never have been taken. I think the bigger consideration here is to give thought to the noble idea that the speaker should stand outside the caucus of his or her political party. But that's a completely different conversation. Let's not go there. With regards to your question about frivolous complaints filed with the speaker, I fully agree. But that is why I said in my deliberations it must be made clear in item 13 of Schedule 1 to the Systems Act whether the Speaker is entitled to do the preliminary investigation himself or herself, or whether it must be contracted out on an interpretation of the words must investigate or must authorize an investigation. That word authorize is problematic, as the learned advocate has said, and has created a lot of headaches in the past. So I would ideally like to see that clarified at least. But if the Speaker, as an objective person who is responsible for the welfare of all councillors, could do the preliminary investigations himself or herself, you will find that it is a cheap, quick method of, let's say, weeding out the bad cases. But that could be sorted out by clarifying the issue about authorizing an investigation. With reference to that you said always acting in the best interest of council, that flows from item 2, sub-item A and item 2, sub-item B of Schedule 1 to the Systems Act, which in itself is very problematic. As you've alluded to, as an old speaker, you will know that item 2 deals with the fiduciary responsibility of councillors towards his or her council. But if you take a look at the structure of item 2, you will also know that it is an item that is written as wide as the Lord's grace. And it has been used in the past in disciplinary hearings for any transgression that you want to find a councillor guilty on, but you can't really fit it into any other item of the Code of Conduct. You just charge him with item 2. But to get a guilty finding on item 2 in leading objective evidence in front of a highly critical panel will be virtually impossible due to the structure of item 2. So, yes, I think that I should leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alderman Kutse. Colleagues, that brings us to the end of our deliberations. I'd like to thank all our participants in this meeting, particularly our presenters in the form of Mr. Kamal Makan and his delegation, Alderman Anton Kutse and his delegation, Councillor Chaba, Advocate Malstorp, for your contribution. Thank you. It's highly appreciated and was very informative. You may leave the meeting if you so wish. We will be with each other for another 5 minutes, I suppose, just to wrap up the way forward. So from here, the political parties will take all the information that they've gathered so far from all quarters to their respective parties, where they will deliberate the amendments and seek a mandate. And at a later stage, we will then reconvene to develop our negotiating mandate for the NCOP. With that, colleagues and stakeholders, and I would like to thank you for being present and for sharing your expertise with this committee. On that basis, I'd like also to thank Tasfia and Candice for their technical assistance, and for my procedural officer, Mr. Johan Kutse. Thank you so much, colleagues. We will reconvene at a later stage, and you will be informed as to when we will debate our final mandate for the NCOP. Thank you so much and have a lovely day.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.